قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن لله 99 اسما 100 إلا واحدا من أحصاها دخل الجنة إنه وتر يحب الوتر. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, Allah has 99 names, 100 minus 1, and whoever believes in their meanings and acts accordingly will enter paradise. And he is witr, which means one, and loves the witr, that is, odd numbers. As-Salamu alaykum. In this episode, we're going to discuss in a different way the 99 best names of Allah Ta'ala, the ones which He, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, called Himself by in the Holy Quran. So let's start. Ala barakatillahi ta'ala. Ar-Rahman. Some say that this is the greatest name of Allah Ta'ala. This name has come from the verb Rahim, to be merciful, to have mercy upon. The noun Rahmah means the mercy. Rahim means womb or kinship. And Arham, plural of Rahim, means blood relative. Dhur Rahmah, possessor of mercy, is also a divine name from the same root. Allah's mercy and blessings are constantly showered upon all creation at all times, although most of creation does not experience it, because they are veiled in darkness and grossness of self-concern. Lights of mercy of Ar-Rahman encompasses the entire cosmos. In the Quran, it is connected with Al-Basmalah, in the name of Allah, and is repeated 114 times, which is the number of chapters. As-Surah, although one surah starts without it, implying that mercy is the first attribute of Allah Ta'ala, which covers all times and circumstances. Its translation is the entirely merciful or the all-merciful. This name has been mentioned 56 times in the Quran, without counting Al-Basmalah in the first of every surah, and 169 times with counting the Al-Basmalah in the first of every surah. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Maryam, chapter of Mary, by 16 times. Ar-Rahim. The root of Ar-Rahim is the same as Ar-Rahman, whereas Ar-Rahman is general and applies to all existence. Ar-Rahim is specific and conditional. Sickness is part of the gifts of Ar-Rahman, whereas seeking healing and remedy is the domain of Ar-Rahim. The relationship of Ar-Rahim to Ar-Rahman is like the eye to the full human body. One is particular and special, whilst the other is all-encompassing. That's why its translation is the especially merciful or the all-compassionate. This name has been mentioned 115 times in the Quran without counting the Al-Basmalah in the first of every surah, and 228 times with counting the Al-Basmalah in the first of every surah. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, by 12 times. Al-Malik. From the verb maluka, to reign, this name has come. The verb maluka is different from the verb malaka, to own or to possess, although they have the same root letters, because the active participle that comes from the verb malaka is not malik, but it is malik, an owner or a possessor. In the presence of the Al-Malik, You may gain access to his powers. You may also be shown levels of his kingship and sovereignty, for all belongs to him, acknowledging in truth that he is the only king. When you receive a most beautiful gift, he is the owner and you are the one who is loaned. That's because Allah Ta'ala is the king of all the kings, and he is the one who gives sovereignty to whom he wants and takes sovereignty away from whom he wants. This name has appeared 5 times in the Quran in 5 different chapters. Al-Quddus, a name that's taken from the verb qaddasa, to sanctify or to consecrate, and the verb qadusa means to be pure. We also say something that is qudsi, and it means that it is holy and sacred. That's why we call the capital of Palestine, Jerusalem, by Al-Quddus, because it is a sacred city for Muslims. Also, the Arab Christians used the term Qidis to call their saints. Absolute purity and freedom from all defects are the attributes of Al-Quddus. The entire creation is engulfed by the holy, sacred, and sublime web of Al-Quddus, the All-Holy, and the Most Pure. This name has appeared 2 times in the Quran, once in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the Exile, and once in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, chapter of Friday. As-Salam. This name is from the verb salima, to be safe and sound. Also, the verb sallama has 2 meanings. First one is to salute or to greet, and the second one is to submit to. And we say sallama amrahu lillah, to submit or to entrust one's case to Allah. And when we mention the name of the Prophet, we say directly after it, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and it literally means Allah prays upon him and greets him, but it was shortened to peace be upon him. The noun taslim has come from this verb, and it means either salutation and greeting or acceptance and admission. Also, we say aslama about someone who becomes a believer in Islam, but the true meaning of this verb is to commit one's case to Allah, and the verbal noun Islam also has come from this verb. In the Holy Quran, Allah Ta'ala called the paradise by Darus Salam, the abode of peace. All the previous verbs and nouns falls into one meaning, which is the peace or As-Salam. If anyone wants to feel the inner peace, he has to give up himself to Allah Ta'ala. The inner peace requires the self-surrender to our God, because He is the door to inner tranquility, ease, peace, and contentment. As-Salam means the safety, the peace, and the security. And who is the one who gives all of that to people? He is Allah Ta'ala. That's why the translation of that name is the bestower of peace, or the giver of peace. This name has appeared only 1 time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the Exile. Al-Mu'min. This name has come from the verb amana, to believe, or to be faithful, and the verbal noun from which it was derived is iman, faith or belief. The verb amina means to be secure or to be protected, and its verbal noun is amn or aman, safety, security, and protection. Mu'min is one who believes that he is subject to divine security and promise, and the name Al-Amin, meaning trustworthy, loyal, honest, is how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was described. So anyone who believes deep in his heart in Allah Ta'ala will be protected, secure, and feels comfort and trust. The translation of Al-Mu'min is the trustworthy or the giver of security. This name has appeared only one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the exile. Al-Muhaymin, a name that's derived from the verb haymana, to control and to guard. And the noun haymana means watchfulness and supervision. Allah Ta'ala watches over, protects, and controls all things, and He always has the control and power of His decrees. He is the monitor, witnesser, and judge of His creation according to His perfect plan. The translation of Al-Muhaymin is the guardian or the safeguarder. This name has appeared only one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the exile. Al-Aziz, a name that's taken from the verb azza, and it has at least 3 different meanings. The first meaning is to be rare and scarce. The second is to become dear, and the third is to become powerful and strong. If you say that someone is azizun alayk, it means that he is so dear and precious to you. And when you say that someone is aziz, it means that he is powerful and honorable and mighty. And al-izzah is the power, the honor, and the glory. Allah Ta'ala calls himself Al-Aziz because He is unique in glory, who will always prevail. The more the seeker experiences humility, abasement, and self-effacement, the more he will realize Izzatullah, or might and glory. The translation of Al-Aziz is the Almighty. This name has been mentioned 87 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Ash-Shu'ara, chapter of the poets, by 9 times. Al-Jabbar. This name is from the verb jabara, meaning to set, to restore, to a good state, and to compel. We say jabara khatira, which means to console or to gratify, and the passive participle majboor is someone who's being forced to do something. The verb tajabbara means to show oneself strong or to tyrannize over. Allah Ta'ala compels all situations to flow towards the original will and purpose for which He had them created. He propels all creation according to His will. His ultimate purpose for creation is submission, acknowledgement, and thus worship of Himself. So, the translation of Al-Jabbar is the compeller. If someone except Allah Ta'ala has been called by this name, it means that he is an oppressive or cruel ruler, or a person exercising power arbitrarily and cruelly, a tyrant. This name has appeared only one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the exile. Al-Mutakabbir. This name has come from the verb takabbara, to be haughty or proud, and the verb kabura means to be older than another in estimation of rank or dignity, to be great or to grow, has been derived. Also, the verb kabbara means to glorify or exalt Allah Ta'ala by saying Allahu Akbar, known as At-Takbir. Allah Ta'ala is greater than whatever can be encompassed by any human comprehension, understanding, or vision. Al-Mutakabbir is an attribute of the one who has brought everything into existence by himself through his own power. Thus, he is worthy of pride. The translation of Al-Mutakabbir is the supremely proud or the supremely great. If someone except Allah Ta'ala has been called by this name, it means that he is an arrogant and he thinks that he is better than others. This name has appeared only one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the Exile. Al-Khaliq, a name that's derived from the verb khalaqa, to create, to originate, to mold or form, and we say Al-Khalq to call all the creatures of the Creator. Also, the word makhluq refers to anyone or anything that has been created by Allah Ta'ala. To bring into being entities from non-existence is the work of the Creator. Everything that is created by Him has an outer appearance, meaning, and finite potential, and an end of its form in the physical world. This name has appeared 5 times in the Quran in 5 different chapters. Al-Bari, a name that's taken from the verb bara'a, to create or to make, and Al-Bariyah is all the creation. Allah Ta'ala has created the cosmos and all existence from non-existence. Thus, it is the most original and unique act of glory by the one Maker to have made impossible things possible. So, Al-Bari is the Maker or the Initiator. This name has appeared 3 times in the Quran, 2 times in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, and 1 time in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the Exile. Al-Musawwir. This name is from the verb sawwara, to form or to fashion a thing, to render an image, also to imagine or conceive something, and we say suwar for pictures or images. Behind every shape there is a meaning, and behind that is the essence. When one adores a beautiful object, one is seeking beauty behind its actual form. Al-Musawwir, the fashioner, has brought about infinite varieties of outer shapes and appearances with equally infinite dynamic relationships. This name has appeared only 1 time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter of the Exile. Al-Ghaffar. For the name Al-Ghaffar, it comes from the verb Ghaffar, to cover, to pardon, or to forgive, and Ghufran is forgiveness and pardon. Allah Ta'ala is described in chapter 7, ayah 155 by Khayrul Ghafirin, the best of the forgivers. Allah Ta'ala is forever covering, concealing, healing, and forgiving. Thus, we are giving many opportunities to heighten our awareness, change our intentions and actions, and return to the natural path meant for us, to submit, know, and worship Him. Al-Ghaffar, the perpetual forgiver, or the coverer of all faults, forgives multiple recurring errors. This name has appeared 5 times in the Quran in 5 different chapters. Al-Qahhar. This name has come from the verb qahara, to subjugate, to overpower, conquer, and predominate. And Al-Qahhir, the dominant or the conqueror, comes from the same root and is another form of this divine name. Wise human beings recognize their inherent weakness and the absolute power of the Creator, Al-Qahhar, the prevailing, or the subduer, overcomes all forms of power, subtle and gross, and all plans and controls. This name has appeared 6 times in the Quran in 6 different chapters. Al-Wahhab, a name that's derived from the verb wahaba, to give, to endow, to bestow, and we say hiba, which means the unmerited favor of Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala gives unconditionally to all His creation and according to His mercy and knowledge of what is best for them in their progress. The gifts of Allah Ta'ala start with the act of creating existence and experience, leading to the greatest gift of all, increased knowledge of the ever-present Creator. The translation of Al-Wahhab is the bestower or the giver of gifts. This name has appeared 3 times in the Quran, 1 time in Surah Al-Imran, chapter of family of Imran, and 2 times in Surah Sad, chapter of the letter Sad. Ar-Razzaq, a name that's taken from the verb razaqa, to supply with the necessities of life, to provide for, to bestow upon, to sustain, and Ar-Rizq is provision, sustenance, or anything from which one benefits in growth, evolvement, ease, and peace. Allah Ta'ala is the source and power behind all provisions for all creatures at all times. Ar-Rizq is not always what we think we want. He allocates what is appropriate for creation to yield and fulfill the highest in their potential. The power of Ar-Razzaq, the continual provider, or the ever-providing, includes material and subtler provision for mind, body, and soul. This name has appeared only 1 time in the Quran, in Surah Al-Dhariyat, chapter of the winnowing winds. Al-Fattah. The name Al-Fattah comes from the verb fataha, to open, to conquer, to reveal, to grant a mercy or victory, like Surah Al-Fatiha, which opens the Holy Quran. Miftah is a key, and Allah Ta'ala is described in the chapter 7, verse 89 by Khayrul Fatihin, the best of openers. Allah Ta'ala always opens new horizons and doors, and provides solutions and relief. Al-Fath is also an insight into new knowledge and the removal of veils and limitations in life's progress. He removes obstacles and opens His treasury of lights and delights. The translation of Al-Fattah is the opener. This name has appeared only 1 time in the Quran, in Surah Saba, chapter of Sheba. Al-Alim. This name is from the verb alima, to know, to become acquainted with, to encompass knowledges concealed, to distinguish, and al-ilm is knowledge or science. Also, we refer to the scientist by the word al-alim, which literally means the one who knows. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all that is to be known before time, in time, and after time. His boundless knowledge is the foundation of lordship and universal supremacy. Absolute knowledge rules over all relative knowledge. He knows best what we intend, the outcome of all actions, and what is most conducive to our real and lasting contentment, based on Al-Iman and basking in His secure presence. The translation of Al-Alim is the all-knowing. This name has been mentioned 154 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, by 21 times. Al-Qabid. For the name Al-Qabid, it comes from the verb qabada, to contract, to seize or grasp, to constrict and restrict, to control possibilities. Allah Ta'ala is the original cause behind experiences of restriction and constriction. All creation is subjected to experiences which relate to an-nafs, the lower self. Al-Qabid also extracts ar-ruh out of the body at the point of death by means of his angel. Al-Qabid restricts and shields the evil of wrongdoers. The translation of Al-Qabid is the restrictor or the withholder. The name Al-Qabid does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form in the chapter of the cow, Surah Al-Baqarah. Al-Basit. This name has come from the verb basata, to expand, enlarge, to unfold, to spread out, to make wide and ample. Allah Ta'ala is the source of ease, flow, growth, and expansion. All creation enjoys and favors this state. Allah Ta'ala is the creator of horizons beyond human conception and imagination. Often, outer and material constrictions can be the key to opening insights and doors of inner knowledge, expansion, and deeper contentment. The translation of Al-Basit is the expander or the extender. The name Al-Basit does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form in the chapter of the cow, Surah Al-Baqarah. Al-Khafid. The name Al-Khafid comes from the verb khafada, to lower, to humble, depress, debase. We say munkhafad about any part of a surface that is lower than the other parts. Allah Ta'ala is the real cause behind the powers which bring about honor as well as dishonor. Al-Khafid, the debaser or the reducer, brings about debasement out of compassion for his mighty presence and greatness. An-nafs always resists debasement and humility, but Al-Mu'min will derive great spiritual benefit from this condition if he is sensitive and reads his mercy. This name does not appear as a name in the Quran, but is inferred from its verbal form. Ar-Rafi'. This name has come from the verb rafa'a, to raise up, exalt, uplift, and elevate. We say murtafa' about any large area high above sea level. Allah Ta'ala is the most exalted Lord of all creation. He raises high the believer through hope and good expectation. Allah Ta'ala elevates pure hearts from their submission and high expectation of Him, through which they witness higher and subtler realms of greatness and lights. The translation of Ar-Rafi' is the exalter. The name Ar-Rafi' does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form 19 times in 15 different chapters. Al-Mu'izz, a name that's derived from the verb a'azza, to be honored, to value in a great manner, to reinforce, to fortify, and it has the same root letters as Al-Aziz. Allah Ta'ala bestows honor, dignity, and power on those who are accepted into His proximity, and thus the glow of His great qualities. Whoever abases himself and maintains at-taqwa will be honored by Allah, the holder of true glory. The more sincere our Islam, Iman, and Ihsan, the more honored we are in the eyes of Allah Ta'ala and His creation. The translation of Al-Mu'izz is the honorer. The name Al-Mu'izz does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form in the chapter of the family of Imran, Surah Al-Imran. Al-Mudill, a name that's taken from the verb adalla, to humiliate, abase, to break or subdue, that also comes from the trilateral verb dhalla, to be abject, humble, low. Human beings experience imperfection because Allah, in His mercy, will always give us cause to recognize our needs and insignificance. Thus, we can truly glorify the all-perfect and mighty Lord who covers human weaknesses and propels us towards His perfection. The translation of Al-Mudill is the abaser or the humiliator. The name Al-Mudill does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form in the chapter of the family of Imran, Surah Al-Imran. As-Sami'. For the name As-Sami', it comes from the verb sami'a, to hear, to listen, to hearken to, and the noun as-sam'a is the faculty of hearing. Allah Ta'ala hears the sounds and silence of all His creation. He hears without ears, sees without eyes, and knows without intellect. Human hearing can only occur through disturbances and vibrations in space impinging upon the instrument of the ear. Allah Ta'ala hears the source, cause, and meaning of all calls, and is the destination of all that has been transmitted. The name As-Sami' is the all-hearing. This name has been mentioned 46 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, by 7 times. Al-Basir. This name is from the verb basara, to look at, to see, to perceive. The noun al-basar is the faculty of seeing, and al-basira is the faculty of insight, cognition. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all sight and cognition, visible and invisible. Al-Basir witnesses what is evident and what is hidden. Human sight is a modest reflection and sample of Al-Basir, needing both light and the instrument to perceive light and shadow, the eyes. The name Al-Basir is the all-seeing. This name has been mentioned 42 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, by 5 times. Al-Hakam. This name comes from the verb hakama, to exercise authority, to govern, to judge, and the noun hikmah is wisdom. Allah Ta'ala is the source of justice, wisdom, and perfect judgment. Al-Hakam confirms His will with authority and will judge His creation according to their actions and intentions through His decrees. Thus, all creation will experience its just destiny. The translation of the name Al-Hakam is the judge. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form 17 times in 13 different chapters. Allah Ta'ala is also described in the Holy Quran as Khayrul Hakimin, the best of the judges, and as Ahkamul Hakimin, the most just of judges. Al-Adl, a name that's derived from the verb adala, to act justly, to treat equitably. In the normal cases, the noun al-adl or al-adala means the exercise of authority in the maintenance of right and just conduct, or in simple words, the justice. And we say that someone is adil, referring that he is just and fair-minded. The ultimate justice is the sincere confession that creation is totally dependent upon the Creator, and as such is all His. This is true justice. Every situation is subject to and measured by His justice, which often differs from human expectations or judgment. What may appear as delayed justice is Allah Ta'ala cloaking His justice in clemency and patience. The translation of the name Al-Adl is the All-Just. This name is not found in the Quran, but inferred from verses like chapter 6, verse 115. Al-Latif. For the name Al-Latif, it comes from the verb latafa, to be kindly, to be fine, elegant, graceful, and when calling someone by Latif, it means he is gracious, kind, the opposite of gross or dense. It also means acutely insightful, and the noun lutf is subtlety and gentleness. Allah Ta'ala is the subtle power and light behind every manifestation, seen, heard, smelt, tasted, or touched, known and unknown. His subtlety, al-lutf, permeates all creation, soft and hard, evident or concealed, sentient or otherwise. The translation of the name Al-Latif is the All-Subtle. This name appears in the Quran 7 times in 7 different chapters. Al-Khabir, a name that's taken from the verb khabara, to experience, to know thoroughly, to possess expertise, and al-akhbar, plural of al-khabar, is news or tidings. Allah Ta'ala is aware of whatever is in the heaven and the earth. His knowledge encompasses all aspects of existence, inner and outer, subtle and gross. Nothing ever moves or happens in existence without His knowledge and according to His decrees. The translation of the name Al-Khabir is the all-cognizant or the all-aware. This name has been mentioned 45 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Suratul Nisa, chapter of the women, by 4 times. Al-Halim. This name is from the verb haluma, to be gentle and forbearing, and the noun al-hilm is the clemency, the forbearance, and the gentleness. The verb haluma is different from the verb halama, which means to dream, and the verbal noun al-hilm is different from the verbal noun al-hulum, which means the dream. Allah Ta'ala is the most tolerant regarding the shortcomings and wrongdoings of His creation. He allows His creation new opportunities for correcting their conduct, for His desire is at-taqwa and knowledge of His, not punishment. That's why He is Al-Halim, the clement, and the most forbearing. This name has been mentioned 11 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, by 3 times. Al-Azim. This name has come from the verb azuma, to be great, mighty, vast, powerful, and the noun al-azama is the quality or state of being solemn, magnificent, and great. The greatness of Allah Ta'ala is beyond boundaries, measures, or descriptions. We consider the prophets to be great in their human character, qualities, and capacities, because we have had a glimpse of their attributes drawn from Al-Azim. The translation of the name Al-Azim is the magnificent or the most great. Also, Dhu Fadlin Azim, the possessor of sublime grace, is a divine name from the same root. This name has been mentioned 13 times in the Quran in 8 different chapters. Al-Ghaffar. Like Al-Ghaffar, the name Al-Ghaffar derives from the verb ghafara, meaning to cover, to pardon, to veil, to conceal. The name Al-Ghaffar means that Allah Ta'ala covers repeated errors, while Al-Ghaffar covers and forgives all different types of errors. The name Ghafiru Dhanb, the forgiver of wrongdoing, that's mentioned in chapter 40, verse 3, is also a divine name from the same root. Allah Ta'ala conceals and covers the faults of the mu'mins, for He knows how best to bring His sincere subjects to Him. To forgive is to renew opportunities and give new space and energy for further spiritual awakening. The translation of the name Al-Ghaffar is the all-forgiving or the ever-forgiving. This name has been mentioned 91 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow, and Surah Al-Nisa, chapter of the woman, by 8 times. Ash-Shakur, a name that's derived from the verb shakara, to give thanks, to be grateful, content, or pleased. The noun shukr means gratitude, and ash-shakir, the grateful one, is a divine name from the same root. Allah Ta'ala rewards and acknowledges appropriate deeds by means of which the seeker is drawn closer. He acknowledges the deeds of the believer by rewarding him many times more than the action itself. The translation of the name Ash-Shakur is the grateful or the appreciative. This name has been mentioned 4 times in the Quran. 2 of them are in Surah Al-Fattah, chapter of the originator. Al-Ali. For the name Al-Ali, it comes from the verb ala, to rise high, to be elevated, lofty, to mount up, and the noun ulu means high or altitude. Also, Al-A'la, the highest, is from the same root. Allah Ta'ala transcends all measures of low and high. He is the creator of all the heavenly spheres. He is beyond them, yet controls and rules them. Al-Ali is a station that is above all perceivable and conceivable states by the human mind. The translation of the name Al-Ali is the Most High. This name has been mentioned 8 times in the Quran. 2 of them are in Surah Al-Shura, chapter of the consultation. Al-Kabir. a name that's taken from the verb kabura, to be great, to grow, increase, to be big or vast, and akbar means greater or greatest. Allah Ta'ala is larger than largeness and vaster than vastness, thus transcending the mind and our ability to visualize His true station. Allah's glory, beauty, power, and majesty are all beyond greatness. Al-Kabir relates to Allah's sanctity before creation and after it. Al-Kabir, the incomprehensibly great, also implies perfection and the ultimate and maximum limit in desirable attributes. This name has been mentioned 6 times in the Quran in 6 different chapters. Al-Hafidh. This name is from the verb hafidha, to keep, to guard, to preserve, to protect, to take care of, and to watch over. Allah Ta'ala, primal patterns and tablet are ever preserved. His original ways and decrees protect His creation in the most appropriate manner in their journey. It is Al-Hafidh who helps and safeguards His creation during their existence. The translation of the name Al-Hafidh is the preserver or the ever-preserving. This name has been mentioned 3 times in the Quran in 3 different chapters. Al-Muqit. This name has come from the verb qata, to nourish, feed, to sustain, and the noun qut means nourishment or any substance suitable as food. Allah Ta'ala has created what is appropriate to nourish, maintain, and develop His creation. Allah Ta'ala sustains all creations through their attraction, absorption, retention, consumption, maturation, and procreation. The translation of the name Al-Muqit is the sustainer or the supreme nourisher. This name has been mentioned 1 time in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa, chapter of the woman. Al-Hasib, a name that derives from the verb hasiba, to reckon, to consider, to count, to believe, to suppose. And another version of this attribute is Sari'ul Hisab, the swift in reckoning. Hasib also implies sufficiency. Allah Ta'ala, the master treasurer of all quantities and qualities, their measure and their whereabouts throughout creation are known and kept by Him. Al-Hasib, the reckoner, is He who suffices His creation. All reckoning and measure emanate from Him. Also, Hasbi Allah, Allah is enough for me, comes from this name. This name has been mentioned 3 times in the Quran. 2 of them are in Surah An-Nisa, chapter of the woman. Al-Jalil, a name that's taken from the verb jalla, to be glorious, evident, effulgent, shining, majestic, lofty, sublime, and the verb jallala means to honor or exalt. Allah Ta'ala, the source of sublime majesty and glory, Al-Jalil, the majestic, encompasses all these lofty attributes to the zone of transcendence and pure essence. This name does not appear in the Quran in this form, but as Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, the possessor of glory and nobility. Al-Karim. This name is from the verb karuma, to be noble, superior in generosity, to be highly esteemed, valued, to be excellent, generous, and magnanimous. The name Al-Akram, the most generous, from the same root, is also in the Quran, and also from the same root comes Karm, that is, grapevines, generous in production. Allah, Al-Karim, is He who gives more than what is asked. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all movement and light upon which all life depends, and thus He is the source of all giving, the most generous, the perfect master. This name has been mentioned 2 times in the Quran in 2 different chapters. Ar-Raqib. This name has come from the verb raqaba, to observe, notice, to watch, guard. Al-Muraqib is the supervisor, and Al-Muraqaba is the watchfulness and the management. We call Allah Ta'ala by Ar-Raqib because He watches over His creation knowingly, protectively, and effectively. Allah Ta'ala is ever watchful over all His kingdoms. No intention or action is ever missed by His omnipresence. Ar-Raqib, the all-vigilant or the ever-watchful, is the essence and center of awareness, which witnesses and thus responds according to individual conditions, needs, and abilities. This name has been mentioned 3 times in the Quran in 3 different chapters. Al-Mujib, a name that's derived from the verb ajaba, to answer, reply, to comply, fulfill, which in turn derives from the verb jaba, to pierce, penetrate, cut, to travel, explore, and jawab is a reply or an answer. Allah Ta'ala is the answerer to all who call on Him, most generously according to real needs. He is Mujibud Da'awat, the answerer of all supplications. Al-Mujib, the responder, or the supreme answerer, responds to the call from all, at all times, according to His perfect discernment. This name has been mentioned 2 times in the Quran in 2 different chapters. Al-Wasi', a name that's taken from the verb wasi'a, to be wide, ample, vast, to contain, to encompass, and the noun al-wusa' is the capacity. Allah's dominion is limitless, and His capacity for knowledge, mercy, and generosity is boundless. Our needs and visions are limited by our existential perceptions. He encompasses all that we need, know, and perceive. His wealth is beyond limit, that is, vast. The translation of al-wasi' is the all-encompassing, or the all-embracing. This name has been mentioned 8 times in the Quran. 4 of them are in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the cow. Al-Hakim. This name is from the verb hakama, to exercise authority, to rule, to judge between. The noun al-hikmah means wisdom, correct judgment, and discernment. And Allah Ta'ala said in chapter 2, verse 269, وَمَن يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And whoever has been given wisdom has certainly been given much good. At all times, Allah's wisdom and the power to implement it encompasses everything, Al-Hakim's perfect knowledge enables him to decree the perfect ways for perfectly appropriate outcomes. His justice and compassion are companions to his wisdom. The translation of Al-Hakim is the all-wise or the most wise. This name has been mentioned 92 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Suratun Nisa, chapter of the woman, by 12 times. Al-Wadud. This name has come from the verb wadda, to love, like, to wish, to be fond of, and the noun al-mawadda is affection or any feeling between lovers or friends. Allah's love penetrates the entire creation and is felt most by His submissive lovers and worshippers. Al-Wadud, the all-loving, or the ever-affectionate, is most intimate, close, and gentle to all, and wishes the best for all creations. This divine affection and love are the cause of much bonding and relationships in creation. This name has been mentioned 2 times in the Quran in 2 different chapters. Al-Majid, a name that's derived from the verb majada, to be glorious, exalted, to excel in glory, and the noun al-Majd is the glory, the honor, and the distinction. Also, we say majada to make somebody dignified or more honorable. Allah Ta'ala is the master of all glory and the source of every manifestation of honor and mercy. The name Al-Majid, the most glorious, relates to Allah, whose essence is most noble, whose actions are most beautiful, and whose generosity is vast beyond measure. This name has been mentioned 2 times in the Quran in 2 different chapters. Al-Ba'ith, a name that's taken from the verb ba'atha, to send, dispatch, to arouse, awaken, to raise, resurrect. The passive participle, mab'uth, is someone sent with an official message or to do work secretly, and the noun al-ba'ath in the Quran means the resurrection. Allah Ta'ala is the source of life on this earth and will resurrect creation after they have experienced death. It is Al-Ba'ith, the resurrector, who sends forth his creation from their graves in order for them to experience what they have earned in the hereafter. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form. Ash-Shahid. This name is from the verb shahida, to be present at, to bear witness or testimony, to confirm, to acknowledge, and the noun ash-shahada is the testimony of faith, as evidenced by La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the ultimate truth of Tawheed. Allah Ta'ala is present at all times, seeing, hearing, and knowing. When Allah's witnessing relates to the visible world, Allah will manifest to us more as Al-Alim. And when it is to do with the unseen, we call upon Allah Al-Khabir. In all cases, Allah is Ash-Shahid, the all-witnessing. He is aware of all actions and intentions. This name has been mentioned 21 times in the Quran. The most chapter where this name has appeared is Suratun Nisa, chapter of the woman. Al-Haqq. This name has come from the verb Al-Haqq, to be true, right, just, valid. The noun Al-Haqiqah is the truth or the reality, and Al-Haqq is the day of judgment when truth will be known. From one absolute truth emanates infinite varieties of realities, manifestations, and experiences. Truth is one, and other realities vary constantly and are short-lived. Al-Haqq, the absolute truth, enables us to distinguish right from wrong, good from bad, truth from falsehood, the real, everlasting, and self-sustaining from the fleeting. This name has been mentioned 10 times in the Quran, 2 of them in Surah Yunus, chapter of Jonah, and Surah Al-Hajj, chapter of the pilgrimage. Al-Wakil, a name that's derived from the verb wakala, to entrust, to commit anything to another's keeping, to delegate, example, a power of attorney, and the name At-Tawakkul is trusting and entrusting your affairs to Allah. Allah Ta'ala disposes of our affairs most efficiently and dependably according to His perfect decrees. When Al-Wakil, the guardian trustee, is empowered over all our affairs, then the journey will certainly lead to the source and original light. Allah Ta'ala is the truly trustworthy, and thus the perfect one to delegate one's affairs to. This name has been mentioned 15 times in the Quran, 3 of them in Surah An-Nisa, chapter of the woman. Al-Qawi, a name that's taken from the verb qawiya, to excel in strength, to be tough. The noun Al-Quwwa is the power, the potency, and the force, and Dhul Quwwa, the possessor of power, is another name from the same root. Allah's power and strength is beyond measure, and His capacity to exercise that power appears in the subtle, spiritual, as well as in the physical domains. All powers are aspects and manifestations of Allah's Quwwa, or power. The translation of the name Al-Qawi is the most strong, or the ever-powerful. This name has been mentioned 9 times in the Quran. 2 of them are in Surah Al-Hajj, chapter of the pilgrimage. Al-Mateen. This name is from the verb metuna, to be firm, solid, strong, and we say about the back that it is metn because it is one of the firmest members in the human's body. The source of absolute firmness and the power to withstand is Al-Mateen, the firm. He is ever reliable in his strength, power, and capacity, and is not given to any weakness, inadequacy, or faults. This name has been mentioned 1 time in the Quran in Surah Al-Dhariyat, chapter of the winnowing winds. Al-Wali. This name has come from the verb waliya, to be near, to befriend, to be a patron of someone, to manage, to govern. In Islam, a saint, or nustik is often referred to as a wali or awliya in its plural form, implying that they have befriended Allah through submission and worship, and He has accepted them close to Him. Allah Ta'ala is an ever-reliable and available helper for seekers of truth. Al-Wali, the patron, is the closest and ultimately most trusted and loyal friend to the believer. It is through this attribute that mercy, victory, and guidance emanate. For the true Muslim in the religion of Islam, The worthiest wali is the Prophet ﷺ himself. This name has been mentioned 15 times in the Quran. 3 of them are in Surah Ash-Shura, chapter of the Consultation. Al-Hamid, a name that's derived from the verb hamida, to praise, eulogize, commend, exalt. Allah Ta'ala has the highest desirable qualities, and thus He is the true worthy recipient of all true praise. Several names derive from this root, such as Mahmud, praised, Hamid, worthy of praise, Ahmad, most praiseworthy, and Muhammad, highly lauded. Allah Ta'ala is the ultimate praiseworthy, and all praise ascends to Him, as has been made known to us by Him. Whatever is praiseworthy, its Creator is even more worthy of praise. It is also He who has given us the primal knowledge of what to praise and desire. The translation of the name Al-Hamid is the praiseworthy. This name has been mentioned 16 times in the Quran in 13 different chapters. Al-Muhsi, a name that's taken from the verb ahsa, to calculate, to take account of, to know numbers, varieties, qualities, and inventories. And the noun ihsa means any result obtained by calculation and statistics. Allah Ta'ala knows everything to do with His creations, their types, species, qualities, quantities, potentials, abilities, limitations, etc. Al-Muhsi, the appraiser, or the all-enumerating, is the record keeper and ultimate expert in the knowledge of what goes on in creation. The name Al-Muhsi does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form. Al-Mubdi. This name is from the verb bada'a, to begin, start, to bring forth, to initiate, originate, and we say mubtada about the subject of a nominal sentence, because we start the sentence by it. Allah Ta'ala brought forth creation from non-existence and will cause it to return to Him. Allah's creations have beginnings, ends, and purpose, and are sustained and empowered by His eternal presence and powers. The translation of the name Al-Mubdi is the originator. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form. Al-Mu'id. This name has come from the verb a'ada, to restore, to bring back, to repeat, and the noun i'ada is the fact of restoration of a thing to its proper owner or original state. Allah's universe is caught within movement, emanating and returning, and constantly fluctuating between opposites. Al-Mu'id, the returner or the restorer, will bring creation back to life after death onto a new phase. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form. Al-Muhyi, a name that's derived from the verb ahya, to give life, to preserve, restore, and save lives, which comes from the verb hayya, to live. The verb ahya is to give life, and Muhyiddin, which is a given name, is he who brings the religion, ad-din, back to life. Also, Yahya, John, is another giving name which comes from this same root. Allah Ta'ala is the originator of life's experience, the source of all creational manifestations. Al-Muhyi, the life-giver, is the energy source of the light behind life. The mystery of life is gifted to creation and is based on constant change, supported and sustained by the ever-constant provider. This name has been mentioned 2 times in the Quran, one in Surah Ar-Rum, chapter of the Romans, and one in Surah Fussilat, chapter of the Explained in Detail. Al-Mumit, a name that's taken from the verb amata, to cause death, which comes from the verb mata, to die, perish, to subside. Allah Ta'ala is the creator of the experience of death, from which no living being is ever deprived or excluded. It is the power of Al-Mumit, the death giver or the bringer of death, that will terminate the experience of earthly life through an angelic agency. No living creature will escape death at the appointed time and place. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form. Al-Hayy, from the same root as Al-Muhyi, which is Hayya, to live. All life on earth is a short form of the next phase of timelessness. Allah Ta'ala, from whom all life emanates, is ever living. He is the bestower of life as experienced in time. He is not subject to time, decay, or death. Al-Hayy, the ever-living, is beyond all matters of change in existence. This name has been mentioned 5 times in the Quran in 5 different chapters. Al-Qayyum. This name is from the verb qama, to stand fast or firm, not requiring external support. From the same root, we have iqama, the call to stand for prayer, and maqam, rank or station, as well as mausoleum. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all subsistence and existence. He bestows all stations and states. Al-Qayyum, the self-subsisting or the all-sustaining, is self-supporting and self-sustaining, firm in His will, and rules over and cares for His dominion and creation by Himself. This name has been mentioned 3 times in the Quran in 3 different chapters. Al-Wajid. This name has come from the verb wajada, to find, to uncover, to meet, encounter, to invent, to experience or feel, and the passive participle mawjood means a living being. From non-existence, Allah Ta'ala has brought forth all imaginable combinations of creation and experience, subtle and gross. Al-Wajid, the perceiver, is the founder of everything in existence and has the power over all that exists, both manifest and otherwise. For Him, everything is evident and clear. This name does not appear in the Quran as such. Al-Majid, from the same root as Al-Majid, which is majada, to excel in glory, honor, elevation, and precious attributes. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all splendor and magnificence, the most excellent and glorious. All the beautiful attributes and actions belong to Al-Majid. His qualities are most desirable, lofty, and longed for. Al-Majid, the most splendid, or the illustrious, is the most sublime, pure, and high in position of excellence. This name does not appear in the Quran. Al-Wahid, a name that's derived from the verb wahada, to be one, alone, to be unmatched, incomparable, unequaled, and we say about someone who is monotheist that he is muwahhid. It is in Allah Ta'ala Al-Wahid that all the diverse divine attributes meet. The singular root of all multiplicity and diversity, Al-Wahid, is unique, all-encompassing, and indivisible, the origin of all attributes relating to actions, qualities, and other names. In short, the One. This name has been mentioned 6 times in the Quran in 6 different chapters. Al-Ahad. From the same root as Al-Wahid, Al-Ahad means the only one, the unique, the incomparable, the singular. Allah Ta'ala is not subject to numbers or plurality. He is other than that which can be identified or defined, the one independent reality upon whom all others depend and draw. This name has been mentioned 1 time in the Quran in Surah Al-Ikhlas, chapter of the sincerity. As-Samad, a name that's taken from the verb samada, to have recourse to withstand, to be sublime, to be steadfast, to be everlasting, to be self-supporting. Allah Ta'ala is everlasting, self-sustaining, self-contained, and most sublime. All needs and calls are addressed to As-Samad. He is the Master and the One who is forever sought after, for He endures beyond time. All creation needs As-Samad, yet He is in no need. The translation of the name As-Samad is the self-sufficient, the everlasting, or the eternal refuge. This name has been mentioned 1 time in the Quran in Surah Al-Ikhlas, chapter of the sincerity. Al-Qadir. This name is from the verb qadara, to be able to do something, to prevail, to determine, and Al-Qudrah is the power of the ability. Also, the name Al-Qadir, the able or the prevailing one, from the same root, is also a divine name. Finally, Laylatul Qadr is the night of determination or power. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all power, possibility, and ability. Al-Qadir has the power over all created entities regarding all matters, known and unknown. His power is perfect, efficient, and appropriate for each situation, and his abilities are indefinable by creation. The translation of the name Al-Qadir is the most able or the all-capable. This name has been mentioned 12 times in the Quran in 9 different chapters. Al-Muqtadir. The root meaning is the same as Al-Qadir, powerful and prevailing. Al-Muqtadir is the superlative of Al-Qadir. Al-Muqtadir, the all-powerful or the omnipotent, makes manifest his power and ability, and he acts and brings forth according to his knowledge and wisdom over and above secondary abilities. This name has been mentioned 4 times in the Quran, 2 of them in Surah Al-Qamar, chapter of the moon. Al-Muqaddim. This name has come from the verb qaddama, to bring forth, to precede, to present, to advance. Allah Ta'ala possesses the power over time, and can expedite matters earlier than expected or imagined. Al-Muqaddim, the expediter, had brought forth the creation of heaven and earth and then embellished them with the Adamic creation. This name does not appear in the Quran. Al-Mu'akhir, a name that's derived from the verb akhara, to delay, defer, to remain behind. The noun al-akhirah is the hereafter or next life. The creator of time has total mastery over it. The postponement of justice of al-mu'akhir gives a chance to creation to remedy wrongdoing. Otherwise, we would perish. The postponer gives us opportunities for repentance and the return to his path so that we experience his perfect mercy and justice. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears in its verbal form. Al-Awwal, a name that's taken from the verb awila, to return, to be before. In general, we say awwal about someone who is first in something. Allah Ta'ala was first before anything and was eternal in essence before any other existences. He is the same now, even after creation. He is constantly the first, and all existences perish except him. He neither ages nor changes. He was and is before everything, within everything, and after everything. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hadid, chapter of the Iron. Al-Akhir, from the same root as Al-Mu'akhir. In general, we say Akhir about someone who is last in something. Hence, Al-Akhirah is the hereafter. Allah Ta'ala maintains creation and His light will continue after creation ends. Thus, He is the last. Allah's attribute of the last is without end, since He has no creational beginning nor end. He is the first, the last, the manifest, and non-manifest. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hadid, chapter of the Iron. Al-Zahir. This name is from the verb ظهر, to be or become, manifest, apparent, clear, evident, and al-Dhuhr means noon and also the midday prayer. Allah's power of will and command makes manifest all existence. The divine light interacting with an existence results in manifestations and experiences. The entire cosmos appeared due to that essential light, which remains with it and guides it to its destiny. The translation of the name Al-Zahir is the manifest. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hadid, chapter of the Iron. Al-Batin. This name has come from the verb batana, to be concealed inside, to be hidden within the inner lining. The noun al-Batin means the belly, while al-Batin is the innermost. It is Allah Ta'ala whose subtle and unseen powers are behind all outer realities. Allah Ta'ala is the hidden root of everything. From the one essence, manifest multitude of attributes, and finally experienced realities. Physical and other realities are activated by the subtle force of the inner, hidden power of the One. The translation of the name Al-Batin is the concealed. or the unapparent. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Hadid, chapter of the Iron. Al-Wali, a name that's derived from the verb waliya, to be near, to guard, to befriend, to govern, to command over. It is from the same root as the divine name Wali. Al-Wali, the governor, is the center that manages all creational affairs and implements Allah's decrees. All created beings experience their appropriate destinies justly and perfectly. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran. Al-Muta'ali, a name that's taken from the verb ta'ala, to be far above. That's why we say Allah Ta'ala, which means Allah, the one who's raised far above, which is also derived from the verb ala, to be high, lofty, exalted, to be proud. Allah Ta'ala is higher than any measurable height and is exalted beyond all limits of exaltation. Al-Muta'ali, the most exalted, is of utmost glory and is exalted in all his attributes beyond comprehension. It is he who knows the seen and the unseen, the past, present, and future. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Ra'd, chapter of the Thunder. Al-Bar. This name is from the verb barra, to be reverent, pious, to be dutiful, devoted, charitable, to treat well, and someone who is bar is someone who is correct, kind, proper, or well, while al-bir is the reverence, godliness. Allah Ta'ala is the source of constant goodness and tolerance. His goodness is evident for those in cautious awareness and who see Him as Ar-Rabb, the Lord of all. Allah's generosity to the virtuous is by increasing their light and knowledge, and thus their inner contentment. The translation of the name Al-Bar is the source of goodness, or the kind benefactor. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Tur, chapter of the Mount. At-Tawwab. This name has come from the verb taba, to turn to Allah in repentance, to regret at heart, to return with no excuse. Allah Ta'ala is Qabilu Tawb, the acceptor of repentance. He is the ever-present who accepts whomever returns to Him with regret and repentance. Repentance can be due to fear of punishment, or in anticipation of rewards, or simply because Allah Ta'ala is the one worthy of it. The translation of the name At-Tawwab is the ever-pardoning, or the most accepting of repentance. This name has been mentioned 11 times in the Quran, 5 of them in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the Cow. Al-Muntaqim, a name that's derived from the verb intaqama, to reject, to avenge, or take revenge, which is also derived from the verb naqama, to loathe, or to disapprove. Allah Ta'ala balances wrong action by bringing about its equivalent consequence. No act goes unnoticed or remains without its result. The arrogant and wrongdoer bring upon themselves the deserved revenge and disasters in both this world and the next. Al-Muntaqim, the Avenger, appears in the Quran as a derivative, that is, Dhuntiqam, the possessor of retribution, 4 times in 4 different chapters. Al-Afu, a name that's taken from the verb afa, to erase or wipe out the trace of something, to pardon or forgive. Al-Afu is he who pardons and erases past wrongs, so he is the pardoner. Allah Ta'ala covers our weakness by His mercy and obliterates the traces of our past wrong actions. He renews, purifies, and gives new opportunities. Allah Ta'ala eradicates the consequence of evil acts and overlooks wrong action of those who return in submission, cautious awareness, and sincere supplication. This name has been mentioned 5 times in the Quran, 3 of them in Surah An-Nisa, chapter of the woman. Ar-Ra'uf. This name is from the verb ra'afa, to be compassionate, merciful, to exercise affection and gentleness. The noun ra'fa means gentleness, kindness, mildness, or tenderness. Allah Ta'ala is constant in His gentleness and compassion. His original love and mercy encompasses all creation, believers and non-believers alike. It is His ra'fa that is reflected in a mother's unconditional love and gentleness for her offspring. The translation of the name Ar-Ra'uf is the most affectionate or the most kind. This name has been mentioned 10 times in the Quran in 8 different chapters. Malikul Mulk. The first part of the name, Malik, emanates from the root Malaka, to possess power, to own a dominion, to prevail, to control, to be master of. But the second part, Al-Mulk, comes from the root Maluka, to reign or to rule. All worldly possessions and kingdoms are short-lived and change hands. The real and absolute king, who sustains, contains, and possesses all dominions, is Allah Ta'ala. To Him belongs the highest subtle realms as well as all physical and material creation. The translation of the name Malikul Mulk is the master of the kingdom or the owner of all sovereignty. This name has been mentioned 1 time in the Quran in Surah Al-Imran, chapter of the family of Imran. Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. The particle Dhu means the owner, the possessor, or the master. Al-Jalal is from the verb Jalla, to be glorious, sublime, majestic, and Al-Ikram is from the verb Karuma, meaning to honor, to be noble, generous, gracious, courteous, magnanimous. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all glory, majesty, nobility, and honor. His Majesty's commands are powerfully implemented and delivered. Allah's grace covers every domain, from the beginning of time to its end. The translation of the name Dhul Jalali wal Ikram is the owner of majesty and honor, or the possessor of glory and nobility. This name has been mentioned 2 times in the Quran, both of them in Surah Ar-Rahman, chapter of the Beneficent. Al-Muqsit. This name has come from the verb aqsata, to act justly or equitably, and the noun qist is an equitable portion. Allah Ta'ala is the original source and cause of justice, balance, harmony, and all desirable outcomes and results. The all-equitable will give the tyrant as well as those in cautious awareness, what they deserve. Allah is the most perfect judge and applier of His justice. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears as a derivative. Al-Jami', a name that's derived from the verb jama'a, to gather, collect, assemble, to compose, to unite, and the noun al-Jama' means the assembly. The unifying power of the Creator has gathered to His oneness all that which is in His kingdom, the heavens and the earth, the seen and unseen, the hard and the soft, the hot and the cold. All opposites and all pluralities are in their appropriate places by the mystery of Al-Jami', the gatherer. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but appears as a derivative. Al-Ghani, a name that's taken from the verb ghaniya, to be free from want, to have wealth, to be rich without needs, and the noun al-ghina is the state of being rich. Allah Ta'ala's wealth is boundless. He is the source of all existential riches. Al-Ghani is beyond any need. Allah's absolute wealth will not increase or reduce in any manner with His boundless generosity. Al-Ghani is the absolutely self-sufficient, the rich beyond need, and thus beyond any description of wealth or treasure. This name has been mentioned 18 times in the Quran in 16 different chapters. Al-Mughni, from the same root as Al-Ghani, the verb aghna is to make someone richer or to enrich. Allah Ta'ala allows riches and desirable wealth to flow down to creation. His gifts are based on His ever-present mercy and generosity. The more a being is aware of the closeness of Allah Ta'ala and His treasury, the less desirous he or she becomes of material wealth and possessions. The translation of the name Al-Mughni is the enricher. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but is a derivative. Al-Mani'. This name is from the verb mana'a, to prohibit, forbid, prevent, to deprive or withhold, to hinder. Mamnu'a is something forbidden. Allah Ta'ala prevents the disintegration and collapse of the universe. He protects His created systems at many levels by His cosmic powers. Yet no system goes on forever. It is Al-Mani' who shields the believer from falling off the path of religion. The translation of the name Al-Mani' is the withholder or the preventer. This name does not appear in the Quran. Al-Dar. This name has come from the verb darra, to afflict, to cause adversity and tribulation. The nouns al-dur and al-madarra is the affliction or the adversity, and something dar means that it is maleficent, harmful, or unhealthy. Allah Ta'ala allows harm and affliction to come upon those who have committed wrong action as a reminder of transgression. The affliction is brought about by deviation from the path of virtue and the religion of Islam. And Allah Ta'ala, in His mercy, has given us the power and desire to avoid such outcomes. The translation of the name Al-Dar is the bestower of affliction or the distresser. This name does not appear in the Quran but is implied. An-Nafi', a name that's derived from the verb nafa'a, to be useful, to avail oneself, to be beneficial, to profit. The nouns an-nafa' and al-manfa'a is the benefit or the favor, and something nafi' means that it is helpful, beneficial, and useful. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all that is desired by His creation. All benefits emanate from Him, known and unknown. When we experience a goodly outcome from the appropriate action, it is a manifestation of the bestower of benefit, or the propitious. This name does not appear in the Quran except as a noun. An-Nur, a name that's taken from the verb nawwara, to shine, to shed light, to illuminate, to enlighten. The noun nar is fire, whereas nur is light. Its plural is anwar, lights. Allah Ta'ala is the original absolute light and the source of all illumination and creation, which are modified derivatives of His light. His light includes all invisible lights of knowledge, inspiration, and insights. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but Allah Ta'ala describes Himself in the Quran as Nuru Samawati wal Ard, the light of the heavens and the earth. Al-Hadi. This name is from the verb hada, to lead in the right way, guide, show, to direct, and from the same root comes hidayah, or huda, right guidance to what is needed. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all help and guidance and appropriate action. When His direction and religion are not followed, we travel without a map. It is through His mercy and will that all creation is guided to Him by Him. The translation of the name Al-Hadi is the guide. This name has been mentioned one time in the Quran in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter of the Criterion. Al-Badi'a. This name has come from the verb bada'a, to produce something new, to originate, to create a novelty, and someone who is mubda' is someone who originates something or creates by imagination. Allah Ta'ala is the source and origin of all. He began creation and maintains His ever-changing universe without previous models or designs. His infinite varieties of pattern, entities, forms, and shapes float in His cosmos according to His great decrees, maps of movement, and destinies. The translation of the name Al-Badi'a is the incomparable originator. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but Allah Ta'ala describes Himself in the Quran as Badi'u Samawati wal Ard, the originator of the heavens and the earth. Al-Baqi, a name that's derived from the verb baqiya, to remain, to continue, to be perpetual or permanent. Al-Abqa, the ever-abiding, is also a divine name from the same root. Allah Ta'ala is not subject to time and space. Thus, Al-Baqi, the everlasting or the ever-surviving, is the permanent base for all change without involvement in change. He is the source of ongoingness and the foundation of change and movement. This name appears in the Quran in its verbal form. Al-Warith, a name that's taken from the verb waritha, to revert to inherit, to be an heir to anyone. Allah Ta'ala describes Himself in the Quran as خير الوارثين, the best of inheritors. As it is, he who will still be there after the end of all creation, he is the true inheritor. Allah Ta'ala is the creator of all, controls all, maintains all, and thus all belongs to him from the beginning and after the apparent end. The true just creator is alone the worthy owner and inheritor. The translation of the name Al-Warith is the inheritor or the heir. This name does not appear in the Quran as such, but it is inferred from other forms of the word. Ar-Rashid. This name is from the verb rashada, to follow the right course, to become sensible, mature, to have true faith, to be well guided. Rashid also means discerning, and ar-rushd is the good sense, the proper conduct, and integrity. Allah Ta'ala is the source of all maturity, wisdom, and discernment. His directions and management are perfect. He is the original source of all patterns, decrees, and ways which lead towards the arrival at the one ocean of light and eternal peace. The translation of the name Ar-Rashid is the most discerning, or the infallible teacher. This name appears in the Quran describing a virtuous prophetic quality whose source is a divine attribute. As-Sabur. This name has come from the verb sabara, to be patient, to endure, to withstand, to be steadfast and certain. As-Sabr is the patience. Allah Ta'ala has created time and space and contains them. Thus, He is beyond experiential haste or patience. His patience is absolute. Thus, He postpones justice or punishment upon human beings brought on by their errors or transgressions. He delays with clemency and gives numerous opportunities for His creation to discover the way to His presence and grace. The translation of the name As-Sabur is the patient or the forbearing. This name does not appear in the Quran. Those are the 99 names that At-Tirmidhi and Al-Ghazali had listed, and they are the most famous. But there are some other divine names that are still debatable between the majority of the shuyukh. I'll leave you with some of them.